History rarely tells you when the world is about to change. Most revolutions begin quietly, hidden behind headlines that never make the front page. In the final months of 2008, as banks collapsed and markets screamed in panic, most people believed the financial system had failed for the last time. But the real story was not the crash. It was the upload that came after it. A simple white paper, posted by someone the world never truly met, delivered the blueprint for a digital rebellion that would grow into the greatest monetary transformation of the modern era. The person who wrote it vanished, but the spark they created never went out. It spread through online forums, cryptography circles, and late-night conversations among programmers who believed that money could exist without permission. Bitcoin was more than code. It was a message, a challenge to the old system, a lifeboat in a sea of collapsing trust. And while the world struggled to rebuild its broken economy, a small group of miners, idealists, and outcasts were building a new one. Their machines hummed in basements and garages, quietly minting the first digital money that no bank, no government, and no corporation could control. It had no CEO, no headquarters, no borders. It just existed. And for the first time in financial history, people realized that the rules could change. The global system was shifting, but almost no one saw it happening yet. What started as an experiment was about to become a movement. The movement grew quietly at first, spreading through chat rooms, encrypted emails, and whispered conversations among people who sensed the world was changing, but could not yet explain why. Bitcoin became a symbol of independence, but it was still rough, unstable, and misunderstood. Every headline called it a scam. Every interview mocked it. Governments dismissed it as a digital toy. Banks said it would disappear, yet each attempt to crush it only made it stronger. The harder the world pushed against Bitcoin, the deeper its roots grew into the cracks of the old financial system. As the network expanded, it revealed something far more important than price or speculation. It proved that trust could be rebuilt without institutions. It showed that value could move without borders. It allowed anyone, anywhere, to hold their own wealth without fear of a bank closing, a system crashing, or a government freezing their accounts. The idea was radical, dangerous, liberating, and it acted like a beacon for a new generation of builders. These builders realized Bitcoin was just the beginning. They saw limitations, cracks, and gaps, not as failures, but as invitations to evolve the technology. The next wave of innovation was not about replacing Bitcoin. It was about expanding the digital frontier beyond simple peer-to-peer money. New platforms emerged with new visions, new possibilities, and new ways to reshape how the world treats value, ownership, and trust. The crypto revolution was no longer a spark. It was a rising tide, and the world was still completely unaware of how far it would go. The next breakthrough arrived when a young programmer imagined something far bigger than digital money. He wondered what would happen if blockchains could hold agreements, automate relationships, and execute actions without needing a middleman at all. This idea became the foundation of Ethereum, a network that turned blockchain from a simple ledger into a global engine. Suddenly, developers everywhere could build applications that lived on-chain, running exactly as coded, immune to manipulation. The world had never seen anything like it. With this new power came an explosion of creativity. Early projects launched tokens, platforms, and entire ecosystems. Dreams of decentralized markets, digital identities, and borderless finance took shape. But innovation rarely arrives without chaos. The ICO boom brought breakthroughs, scams, fortunes, and failures, sometimes all in the same week. People jumped into projects they barely understood, chasing stories they hoped would turn into empires. Yet beneath the noise, one truth became clear. Crypto was evolving from a rebellion into an industry. Still, something was missing. Bitcoin excelled at storing value. Ethereum excelled at programmable contracts. But neither solved the biggest problem in global finance. The world needed a digital asset that could move value as easily as information, a neutral bridge that could connect banks, currencies, and networks without friction. This gap was not a flaw in crypto. It was an open door. And someone was already walking through it, quietly building the infrastructure that would one day support the next financial era. While the world focused on speculation, a different vision was taking shape behind closed doors. It did not chase hype, memes, or overnight gains. It aimed at something far larger, rebuilding the very plumbing of global finance. That vision was XRP, designed for settlement speed, efficiency, and interoperability. It was engineered not for the next bull run, but for the next century of international value movement. Unlike the chaotic waves of ICO tokens, XRP had a purpose from day one. It solved a real problem: cross-border payments trapped in outdated rails. Banks relied on slow, costly systems that locked money in transit for days. Corporations struggled with capital inefficiencies. Economies suffered under the weight of friction. XRP attacked the issue directly, providing liquidity in seconds rather than days. It was not a meme. It was infrastructure. But real utility does not arrive without resistance. XRP faced skepticism from purists, criticism from the uninformed, and eventually the most aggressive regulatory battle in crypto history. The lawsuit became a global spectacle, a showdown that would decide how digital assets fit into the modern world. And when the dust settled, XRP did not fall. It proved its resilience. More importantly, institutions realized something powerful. Crypto was no longer just digital gold or programmable contracts. It could be the silent engine behind a new financial network. With tokenization rising, interoperable systems emerging, and banks adopting blockchain rails, utility assets like XRP were stepping into a role far bigger than anyone expected. The shift had begun, and the world had not even seen the full scope of what was coming next. As innovation accelerated, the crypto world split into two realities. On the surface were the loud narratives, meme coins, hype cycles, and social media storms that distracted millions. But beneath all that noise, a quieter transformation was unfolding. Governments, banks, and major institutions were no longer observing crypto from afar. They were entering the field, studying the technology, testing private networks, and preparing for a future where value moved at digital speed. Regulators around the world began drafting frameworks that would eventually define the new era. Some countries embraced digital assets as engines of economic growth. Others tried to slow them down. But the outcome was always the same: greater clarity, greater adoption, and greater recognition that blockchain was not a passing trend. It was the foundation of the next financial cycle. Central bank digital currencies emerged, each promising faster payments, better oversight, and improved financial inclusion. Yet every CBDC shared the same limitation. They were isolated systems, digital islands in a growing ocean of tokenized value. None of them solved interoperability. None solved global liquidity. None connected nations, currencies, and networks into a single fluent system. That challenge created the perfect opening for digital bridge assets. Technologies built to link systems together rather than compete with them. XRP, XLM, XDC, QNT, and others began stepping into roles that the old system could not fill. They were not replacements for national currencies. They were the connective tissue of a new global architecture. The world was shifting faster than anyone realized, and the next transformation would redefine money, markets, and the way value travels across the planet. As the old system strained under its own weight, a new financial blueprint emerged, quietly adopted by those who understood where the world was heading. Tokenization became more than a concept. It evolved into the core mechanism for modern finance. Real estate, commodities, carbon credits, bonds, supply chains, and entire markets began moving on-chain. Every asset class, once tied down by paperwork and delay, started transforming into digital representations that could travel instantly across networks. This shift exposed a truth that had been ignored for decades. The global economy was never slow because of lack of demand or technology. It was slow because of outdated infrastructure. Settlement delays, correspondent banking chains, siloed ledgers, capital inefficiencies, and multi-layer intermediaries created friction that cost the world trillions every year. Tokenization broke those bottlenecks open, but it also revealed a new challenge. The world needed a universal way to move these digital assets across borders without rewriting the rules of every nation. Interoperability became the next frontier. Chains needed to talk. Systems needed to sync. Digital assets needed paths to travel. This is where the technology behind global bridge assets became indispensable. Instead of replacing currencies, these networks allowed every currency, CBDC, and tokenized asset to flow through a neutral connector in real time. It was not about domination. It was about connection. As institutions upgraded their rails, the traditional financial world began blending with the digital one. the separation between crypto and mainstream finance dissolved. What stood before humanity was not a replacement system, but an integrated one built for speed, transparency, and global reach. As the world shifted toward digital rails, the most powerful institutions began to understand a deeper reality. Speed alone would not define the future. What mattered was orchestration. Coordination. The ability for every asset, every currency, every network, and every ledger to operate together without friction. Interoperability stopped being a technical idea and became a global priority. Without it, tokenization would exist in isolated pockets. With it, the entire world could operate like a single, fluid financial organism. This is where utility networks separated themselves from the noise. Assets built for real-world functions stepped into their purpose. XRP became a bridge for global liquidity. XLM enabled inclusive transfers and micropayments across vast regions. XDC powered digitized trade, supply chains, and global commerce. QNT provided an overlay network capable of linking private and public ledgers. IOTA connected machines and automated value movement. Ethereum secured tokenized assets at scale. Combined, these networks formed the skeleton of a new monetary era. Behind the scenes, major banks, payment giants, and government agencies quietly began migrating pieces of their infrastructure to blockchain-based systems. What once sounded like science fiction became routine. Settlements that took days shrank to seconds. International payments that required layers of intermediaries compressed into a single transaction. And the global liquidity crisis that had threatened economies for decades found relief through programmable, automated flows. Crypto was no longer an outsider technology. It had become the hidden engine of global finance. And as adoption spread from institutions to nations, the world unknowingly stepped into the early stages of a full economic reset, one built not on collapse but on transformation. The shift was subtle at first, almost invisible to the everyday person. Banks updated their systems, corporations adopted new settlement tools, governments modernized their financial infrastructure under the banner of efficiency and security. But beneath those harmless headlines, a far larger transformation was taking place. The world was quietly converging toward a unified digital foundation, a system where value no longer crawled across borders. It moved at the speed of information itself. As global debt climbed and financial pressure mounted, nations began to recognize that the old monetary framework could not support the next era of economic growth. Paper-based processes, slow settlement rails, and fragmented liquidity were relics of a world that no longer existed. The answer was not a single world currency. It was a network of many currencies connected by neutral digital bridges. This architecture allowed nations to maintain sovereignty while gaining access to a more efficient global system. Institutions that once dismissed crypto as a threat now embraced it as the backbone of modern finance. The rails powered by utility assets became essential infrastructure. They solved inefficiencies that had plagued the global economy for decades. Complexity simplified, costs dropped, settlement risk dissolved, and suddenly the idea of a coordinated technology-driven reset moved from conspiracy to inevitability. The world did not fall apart. It reorganized, block by block, ledger by ledger, connection by connection. What emerged was not a replacement for the dollar or the euro or the yuan. It was a new financial layer woven beneath them all, making every asset more fluid, every market more open, and every transaction more intelligent. The reset had already begun. Most people simply had not realized it yet. As digital rails strengthened, a new pattern emerged, one that only insiders and analysts noticed at first. Nations were no longer competing to dominate the financial future. They were competing to connect to it. The question was no longer, who controls the new system, but who integrates into it the fastest? And while headlines focused on political battles, hidden alliances formed behind closed doors. Central banks, once skeptical of blockchain, now ran pilot programs powered by the very networks they once criticized. Payment giants quietly integrated bridge assets. Trading houses tokenized commodities. Real estate markets digitized land ownership. The world's most powerful institutions were converging on a single idea. Efficiency was the new currency of influence. For the first time in modern history, the global economy began sinking in real time. The liquidity bottlenecks that slowed trade for decades dissolved. International settlement no longer relied on layers of intermediaries or locked capital sitting dormant around the world. Instead, value traveled like electricity, instantly, invisibly, undeniably. Yet even as this transformation accelerated, most people remained unaware. The shift was not loud. It was not chaotic. It was engineered to feel seamless. Money continued to work. Markets continued to move. But beneath the surface, the entire foundation had been replaced with something faster, smarter, and more resilient. This was the great paradox of the new financial era. The biggest monetary transformation since the invention of the internet was happening right in front of humanity, and almost no one realized it. Because when evolution is smooth, it rarely announces itself. It simply becomes the new normal. But a transformation this large does not happen without a deeper purpose. Behind the technological upgrades and regulatory shifts was a global need far greater than faster payments or improved efficiency. The world was drowning in debt. Nations were running out of options. Traditional monetary policy could no longer prevent crises. It could only delay them. Something had to change, not through collapse, but through redesign. And blockchain offered the blueprint for that redesign. Tokenized debt markets allowed countries to repackage and restructure obligations without triggering chaos. Smart contracts automated repayment flows. Digital settlement removed delays that once strained liquidity. And neutral bridge assets enabled nations to transact without relying on a single dominant currency. This was not just modernization. It was controlled stabilization, the first step in a long-term strategy to reset the global financial system quietly, methodically, and without mass panic. The old world had depended on slow movement, delayed settlement, and inefficient structures. Those flaws hid systemic weakness. But in the new digital architecture, inefficiency had nowhere to hide. Every ledger spoke the same language. Every transaction left a trail. Every asset moved with precision. Transparency became the foundation of resilience. And yet, this new transparency did not create chaos. It created trust. For the first time in decades, the global financial system was evolving in a way that balanced national sovereignty with global connectivity. Each country kept its currency, each maintained its policies, but all shared the same digital infrastructure beneath them. This was the beginning of a synchronized global economy, one built for a future that had already arrived. As global systems synchronized, another truth became impossible to ignore. The financial world was no longer being shaped by governments alone. Technology providers, protocol builders, liquidity networks, and digital asset ecosystems had become quiet architects of the new era. The rails that moved value were no longer controlled solely by central banks or legacy institutions. They were now shared between public blockchains, enterprise ledgers, and interoperable bridges that connected them all. Power had shifted, not away from nations, but away from inefficiency. This shift did not weaken countries. It strengthened them. With programmable money, instant settlement, and tokenized assets, governments found themselves with tools they had never possessed before. They could distribute relief faster, track flows with precision, and settle trade without intermediaries draining resources. Markets became more transparent. Corruption became harder. Access widened. Barriers shrank. And global cooperation became a practical necessity rather than a political aspiration. Yet even as the world embraced these tools, one asset class emerged as the backbone of it all: utility-driven digital assets. They were not speculative bets. They were infrastructure. They allowed banks to settle instantly, supply chains to operate fluidly, and nations to connect through shared digital pathways. And as their adoption expanded, traditional financial players realized that ignoring them was no longer an option. The difference between old and new was simple. The old world moved on trust layered over slow systems. The new world moved on code reinforced by speed. And the more the system evolved, the clearer it became that the final stage of this transformation had nothing to do with price charts or market cycles. It was about preparing humanity for the next phase of the global economy. As the digital economy matured, the final stage of transformation revealed itself, not as a single event, but as a gradual realization. The world was not moving toward a new currency. It was moving toward a new operating system, one where value could move as effortlessly as data, where markets could synchronize without friction, and where nations could maintain sovereignty without isolation. The old paradigm treated money as static, locked in borders, slowed by bureaucracy. The new paradigm treated money as dynamic, programmable, mobile, intelligent. This shift unlocked something extraordinary. For the first time in modern history, global collaboration became technologically possible. Trade could settle instantly. Aid could reach crisis zones without delay. Capital could flow without draining liquidity from developing nations. The entire system, the same system that once cracked under pressure, could finally breathe. And the backbone enabling all of it was not a single dominant power, but a network of interoperable technologies designed to connect rather than conquer. Utility assets became essential infrastructure. They bridged currencies, linked ledgers, and automated financial logic. But more importantly, they eliminated the vulnerabilities that had haunted the global economy for decades. No more multi-day settlements, no more locked capital, no more hidden bottlenecks capable of triggering systemic collapse. The machinery of global finance was becoming transparent, responsive, and adaptive. And as institutions embraced this new backbone, something profound happened. Crypto was no longer the outsider looking in. It had become the foundation beneath everything. The world had not replaced its financial system, it had upgraded it, quietly, efficiently, and permanently. With the new digital foundation in place, the world reached an inflection point few could have predicted in the early days of Bitcoin. What began as a silent rebellion had matured into the infrastructure of a synchronized global economy. Banks no longer questioned blockchain, they depended on it. Governments no longer feared digital assets, they integrated them. Corporations no longer experimented with tokenization, they built entire business models on it. The transformation was not theoretical. It was operational, measurable, and irreversible. Yet one critical piece remained understated: the emergence of a multi-rail financial world. There would be no single chain to rule them all, no universal currency replacing every nation's money. Instead, the future was modular, a world where Bitcoin served as digital gold. Ethereum powered programmable markets, and utility networks like XRP, XDC, XLM, QNT, IOTA, and others connected the rails of global finance with precision. Each played a role, each filled a gap, and together they formed a digital ecosystem stronger than any single network could ever be. In this new architecture, competition mattered far less than coordination. The winners were the networks capable of solving real problems: liquidity, speed, trust, and interoperability. As the global economy finally aligned with digital efficiency, value movement became universal. Anyone, anywhere could transact across borders without friction. Entire industries optimized, markets stabilized, and for the first time in history, humanity built a financial system capable of evolving as fast as the world around it. The transformation was complete in function, but not in awareness. Most people still had no idea they were living inside a new monetary era, but soon they would. Then came the moment when the world finally began to notice. Not because governments announced it, not because banks explained it, but because everyday people started experiencing the difference. Payments arrived instantly. International transfers no longer felt like sending money into a void. Businesses settled invoices in seconds instead of days. Markets operated with a rhythm that felt precise, efficient, almost alive. The change was subtle but undeniable. The world was running smoother, faster, cleaner, and few understood why. But beneath that improved experience was the digital engine built over the past decade. Utility assets quietly facilitated settlement. Interoperable networks connected ledgers behind the scenes. Tokenized assets flowed through corridors that never closed. And the old financial fractures that once created crises now appeared as fading memories in a system engineered to adapt instead of break. The foundation had shifted from analog friction to digital precision. This newfound stability did not eliminate global challenges, but it created a world where solutions were finally possible. Emerging markets gained access to liquidity they had never been able to tap. Supply chains adapted in real time. Economic shocks softened rather than detonated, and value moved with a clarity that exposed inefficiencies long hidden by outdated rails. Still, the public remained unaware of how deeply this new infrastructure had reshaped their daily lives. They did not see the bridging protocols beneath their transactions, nor the tokenized layers handling their data. They only felt the result: a world more connected, more resilient, and more synchronized than ever before. And unknowingly, humanity stepped into the final chapter of the digital monetary revolution. The final chapter did not arrive with alarms or headlines. It arrived with understanding. Piece by piece, the world realized that money had quietly evolved into something far more powerful than numbers in a bank account. Value had become programmable, transferable, borderless, and intelligent. The systems people trusted, banks, payment apps, international markets, were no longer running on outdated rails. They were running on a digital backbone shaped by the very technologies once dismissed as speculative experiments. This was the moment when nations, institutions, and citizens finally recognized the scale of what had been built. Bitcoin stood firm as digital gold, a store of value beyond inflation or manipulation. Ethereum continued to power programmable economies and tokenized markets. Interoperability networks connected the once isolated worlds of CBDCs, banks, and blockchains. And utility assets, XRP, XLM, XDC, QNT, IOTA, and others, became the most essential pieces of the global engine, the silent bridges that kept everything moving. The digital economy no longer existed alongside the traditional system. It was the system. Every major market settled faster. Every transfer carried less friction. Every nation gained tools that made their financial infrastructure more stable, more transparent, and more adaptable. Humanity had crossed a line from which it could not return, and would never want to. The financial world had not collapsed, it had transformed. The reset was not an explosion, it was an upgrade. Quiet, deliberate, and inevitable. And now, standing on the other side of the greatest monetary evolution since the birth of the internet, the world finally understood one truth: the future of value had arrived, and it was here to stay. The world did not realize it had crossed a threshold until it looked back and saw that nothing worked the way it once did. Value no longer crept through outdated channels. It flowed through digital rivers powered by code, precision, and mathematics. The systems that had once needed rescue every decade now operated with a stability no previous era had achieved. Crises still existed, but they no longer shattered nations. They were absorbed, adjusted, and redirected by a financial architecture built to respond instantly. The greatest irony of all was simple: the revolution everyone feared never came. There was no collapse, no overnight replacement, no single currency rising above all others. Instead, the world evolved into a multi-rail system where every major digital asset played a part. Bitcoin solidified as the immutable anchor. Ethereum acted as the programmable heart. XRP and other utility networks became the fluid arteries connecting every ledger, every currency, every economy. The reset was never about destruction. It was about optimization. And the result was a global economy more synchronized than any in human history. Nations retained their sovereignty. Citizens kept their currencies. But beneath them all, a new digital foundation carried the weight of the world, silently ensuring that value could move freely, securely, and instantly. This is the story of how crypto rose from a whispered idea in a broken economy to the backbone of a new global system. A story of vision, struggle, innovation, and resilience. A story still being written every day. Because the future of money is no longer coming. It is already here.